Hello, and welcome to Shaking and Sipping. This is the show where we shake, or today stir, a cocktail or other mixed drink, talk a bit about its history, some variants, take a sip, and see how it is. We're continuing our quest to work through the IBA's official list of cocktails to see how those stack up. We're in the second section, the contemporary classics, and this week's contemporary classic is the Mojito. Now, the Mojito is certainly a classic. It's another one of those, like most of the past couple, that have been drinks that everyone's heard of. Even non-drinkers have heard the term. If you are a drinker, you probably tried one or been with someone who's had one. Definitely a popular drink. Has been for a very long time. This is another one that is a little bit weird to be in this section, the classics, because it stretches back actually hundreds of years, probably. So probably should have been in the unforgettables, but contemporary classics is fine. Now, this is normally where I'd give what I think is a pretty clear history of the drink, maybe try to narrow it down between a few things that are floating around out there, and I'm sure that's what you're wanting to know. I'm wanting to know that too, because this drink's history is a mess. There's lots of little bits and pieces, but there's really no one cohesive story for where this drink came from and how. The history goes, like I said, way, way back. The first story, which is a muddled, confusing story that isn't probably true, but might have something to do with something, involves Sir Francis Drake, who was headed to Havana in order to raid the gold reserves that they had there at the time, and then that didn't work out for him, and he left very promptly. And there's a thing called a Drake cocktail that either was something that sprung up that he already made beforehand, or that sprung up in Europe afterward, that was very similar to a mojito but features cognac as opposed to rum. Or maybe it was something they started making in Cuba, like in celebration for him leaving or something. And so there's this whole story about this Drake cocktail existing, and then eventually someone in the 1830s switching it to a modern rum and renaming it the Mojito. Sure. There's some other just general stories that the drink just kind of sprang up and got its name later, which I think, even if isn't true, certainly is true, right? Even if some random guy's drink was not recorded and completely forgotten about, someone made a version of this hundreds of years ago, certainly. It's a very simple drink. It's just rum, lime juice, mint, and sweetener. Certainly something like that happened, like we've talked about in some previous episodes. There's specifically a claim that some of the people who were enslaved, who were working on some of the sugar plantations in Cuba, may have actually created it themselves, that they took some of the sugarcane juice that they were producing and got a hold of rum somehow and mixed that together. And if that's the case, this initial version apparently, I believe, would not have had the lime in it, or wouldn't have had the mint in it, and then that got added later, and that could be true as well. Again, I would not be shocked to hear that certainly someone who had sugarcane juice managed to get a hold of some rum and added it to it. That sounds believable to me, but we have no idea if any of these things add up to anything. There is stuff you can dig into. Some of these stories are a little more detailed than I'm being, but none of them to me seem to have really any historical clarity. Even the name of the drink, we have no idea. So there's an idea that maybe it is sort of a corruption of the diminutive form of saying wet in Spanish. Like it's a little wet. Which, okay, I guess. There's also, of course, a sort of marinade stroke sauce that is common in Cuba called a mojo, which is sort of a citrus and oil sort of marinade. Use it for pork a lot. Maybe it's somehow related to that name. There's also, going back to those folks working on the plantations, there's a thought that the word mojo meant like a blessing or some sort of a like protective word in their original language that they spoke other than Spanish, and that maybe they said that over the drink or something when they were making it, if that story's true. no idea where this name comes from. It just sort of springs up after not existing as a name for many, many years. So unfortunately, I've got really no clear history on this. Oh, I guess I should give the last one. We always have an Ernest Hemingway tie-in. It seems, I think this is the maybe fourth one now. There's this story that he really liked mojitos. He's supposed to have gotten really into them at the Bodeguita del Medio, which is a bar in Havana that still exists. And they've even got this, like, I don't know if it's a napkin or a tablecloth or something. It's this big, weirdly shaped note, which is why I don't really think it's paper, but I don't know, maybe it is. And they've got it up on the wall, and it says something like, my daiquiri at El Floridita and my mojito at La Bodeguita. And then is signed Ernest Hemingway. We covered in a previous episode, he definitely did love a daiquiri at El Floridita. There's absolutely no evidence that he ever even went to La Bodeguita other than this note. He's never mentioned it in any of his writings. In none of his books does a character drink a mojito. No one who knew him then mentioned him going to this bar. So no idea if that's true. Most historians think untrue. I mean, is it possible he was in there one day and tried one? It's possible. Doesn't seem like, that was one of his go-to drinks. And part of that myth is that La Bodeguita then claims that they're the first ones to formally put the pieces together and call it a mojito, etc. They could have. We have no evidence of that other than this note from Ernest Hemingway that he probably didn't write, that he would have written decades after they created it, if it's true. Anyway, that's enough nonsense this week. I'm sorry I don't have a real history for you, but we're going to make sort of 2.5 versions of the drink. We're going to follow the IBA spec, of course. Then we're going to mix it up just a little bit differently, possibly switching out the rum as well. Haven't decided yet. We'll make that decision on the fly, and then we'll do a little bitters edition to finish up. That's all we've got. Let's start making the first one. All right, so one of the first things we get into with the mojito is how we deal with the mint. Just like last week we talked about in the mint julep, there's arguments about whether you muddle it, don't muddle it, shake it, add it in when you stir it, steep it. Lots of different ways to deal with the mint, different reasons why those maybe do or don't work. Same applies here. Everyone's got a different thought on what you do with the mint exactly. Most versions do not shake. They are built in the glass and then stirred. But whether or not you muddle the mint first, how you break up the mint, amount of mint, that's very much up for debate. IBA's method here, I don't like. I also think it's partially unclear. So IBA says 6 sprigs of mint. Now a sprig is a whole thing of mint. There's no way that's what they mean. First of all, it's just way too much. And second of all, in their own picture, there's clearly not 6 sprigs of mint in it. It also says 6 pieces mint sprigs. Isn't a phrase that makes any sense. So I think they actually just mean 6 leaves. In the picture, you can't see the whole glass, but you can only see about 4 leaves in the glass. That seems way too low. So I have no idea. I'm gonna just go ahead and sort of denude this one sprig and see how many we get. So that's 2, 3, 9, 10, that one looks crummy. Alright, so we have 10 mint leaves of various sizes. That's going to have to do, because I just don't know what the IBA is talking about. To that, we need some sugar. I've got my ultra-fine here. They call for 2 teaspoons of just regular white caster sugar. I'm going to use about half a bar spoon of ultra-fine here. Vary that to your taste, obviously. And then we need some lime juice. We're going for 20 milliliters, or about 2/3 of a fluid ounce. So quite a healthy amount of lime juice there. And now IBA calls for us to mix these. A baffling instruction again. They aren't asking us to muddle them, but this is, how am I mixing these? I don't really know. We're gonna do it like this. It's not really gonna do that much, but maybe we'll dissolve some of the sugar, I suppose. Alright, so most of that sugar is now dissolved. We need to add to this a splash of soda water. Sorry to be so complaining on this video, but this doesn't make a lot of sense either. Generally when you add a splash of something like soda water, you're doing that at the end or once you have all your components in, so you're trying to top it, get to a certain volume, a certain color, a certain fill line. But here no idea what that means in this context. I guess that's a splash. All right, now we're supposed to fill the glass with ice, and they don't specify type of ice, and in their photo it looks like cubes. So we're gonna go ahead and put in some cubes of ice. Then we're gonna add our rum. This is of course gonna traditionally be a white Cuban rum, like Havana Club. We've talked many times about that product's lack of availability. So we're gonna use Bacardi, Puerto Rican rum, originally from Cuba, of course. And we want 45 milliliters, or about 1.5 ounces. Okay, now that we've added the rum, as well as some soda water earlier, we now add soda water up to level. Why? Why? Why on earth? Okay, that's plenty. I don't understand this drink at all. And then it asks us to stir lightly to involve all the ingredients, which that part makes sense to me. I'm finally on board. IBA, I will give it a light stir. All right, and then for a garnish, we want a sprig of mint and a wedge of lime. And that is an IBA spec Mojito, I think. Who knows on how much mint or soda water was supposed to be in this drink. It's not bad. Yeah, there's just not a ton happening. We didn't really muddle the mint or sort of mix it enough to really extract much mint, so I get it nicely on the nose. And I get a little bit of lingering mint, but it certainly is not a sort of key element of the drink. It's just very lightly there, which is fine. It's sweet, but not incredibly sweet. There is definitely lime in there. There's too much soda water. There's not enough rum. There's not enough mint. It's fine. It's just there's like, oh, there's a little bit of sweetness. There's a little bit of citrus. There's, I guess, a little bit of rum maybe that I can't really detect. Fine drink, nothing amazing. I mentioned one variant we're going to try here is adding in some bitters. Does not seem to have been an early or common addition, but it does show up a number of places more recently as a thing to do. Always love that nice color that you get from mango. I get just a hair of the bitters on the nose. Nose is mostly mint, obviously, because I've got this big sprig here, even though it's not that strongly in the drink. Yeah, I do read the bitters in there. Okay. Right in the middle, kind of the flavor experience. I get that dark, warm, slightly bitter thing happening in concert with some of the citrus. It actually has a nice sort of round flavor there. Still, the drink itself, there isn't enough going on for it to really matter, but it does make sense. I kind of like that. All right, so for version 2, we're going to change quite a few things. We're going to change proportions. We are going to change rum type. I've made an executive decision there, just to make this a little more exciting. And we're going to make a change to the method that's not going to be immediately apparent. So it's going to appear that we're starting off exactly the same by adding lime leaves directly to the glass, because we are. This time I want a few more as well. So I'm going to do this whole sprig, and then I'm also going to do this whole smaller sprig. Now, again, things are going to look very similar. We're going to go in with some lime juice, this time cutting it actually back just a hair to 15 milliliters. So that's 15 milliliters, or about half a fluid ounce of that. We also this time are going to switch up our sugar to be simple. This is my 2-to-1 white, as opposed to trying to dissolve regular sugar, which never works. Here I want about 10 milliliters, so that's about 1/3 of an ounce. So we've got about 10 milliliters. And then for rum. Now here, again, this is, if we were making this traditionally, the Bacardi's a fine choice, or maybe a Bacardi with just a hair of age on it, the next step up, the one that's like 3 years old. But I want this to be funkier, so we're just gonna go to my well rum, the Plantation, and we are cranking it up a bit. We're going to 60 milliliters, or about 2 fluid ounces. All right, we're not going to add any soda water right now. What we are going to do is add ice, but do it a little differently. Our friend the Lewis bag seems to be showing up quite a bit lately. I'm going to go ahead and crush some ice. All right, now we are going to add a decent proportion of our crushed ice. What I want to do is fill up the glass maybe 3/4 of the way full. All right, so now we're gonna stir it. And the difference this should make here is that because we've got all this ice in there, and we're gonna get more sort of liquid with the mint as well as the ice contact, we should express quite a bit more mint oils and essences than we would in the previous version. Also, one of the main components of mint flavor is primarily alcohol soluble. So mixing it like we did in the first one with only the lime juice and soda water isn't going to get those flavors out. So now that we have those involved, we're going to add yet more crushed ice. All right, we've got that kind of right up to the top. Now we really are just going to add a splash of soda water just to get to right about there. Throw in our sprig of mint. Throw in our lime wedge. And throw in a straw. I won't make any claim to this being more historically accurate because who knows, but a mint or a mojito that I think is a bit better thought out, makes a little more sense, and probably is more historical to, say, a 1930s one made in Cuba. So I immediately like that more because of the Plantation, right? I love Plantation. But I am getting more mint. I'm actually getting more sweetness. There's not really more sugar in it, but that's much better integrated than the ultra-fine ever would be. Lower amount of lime's fine. It's in there, but now I don't read it as lime so much as it is just a tart element that I'm reading at the same time as I'm reading sweetness and a little bit of rum funk. So that's just all a whole nice package. This rules. I could slam this back in like one sip. I love this. Let's try the old bitters edition here. Here I'm almost reluctant to do it because I don't want to mess this drink up. Give it a good stir. I again am quite partial to this sort of peach blush color that bitters tend to give clear liquids. Maybe not everyone is, but I am. I mean, I like that a lot. Tames down the sweetness a little bit. And I read just a little bit of a allspice note, sort of right at the end, that kind of lingers. Yeah, I think it's allspice, some kind of baking spice note. I put in quite a bit. That was about 6 dashes. Maybe some folks wouldn't like that. I quite do. I think that allspice and mint kind of goes nicely together, especially the mint that I'm reading from the garnish. Not bad. So that's the Mojito, certainly a classic that we all know and love. If you haven't tried one, you definitely should. It's a very simple drink. Add mint, rum, and lime, and then sweeten it how you want, add bitters if you want, add soda water if you want. You really don't have to be completely honest. Some folks make these with other things. They make them with tequila and things. You can certainly try that. Really, this is just another form of smash, like we talked about in the mint julep last week, that juleps and smashes are classes of things, and maybe one contains the other, maybe they're the same thing, whatever. This is just another smash for you to try. So if you like the sort of mint and spirit thing, but maybe you want a little more sweetness or a little bit longer drink than like a mint julep that's very, very, whiskey forward, this could be the drink for you. Please do all the YouTube stuff, like, share, subscribe, leave a comment, etc. I'd really appreciate it. Watch the previous 50-some episodes of IBA that we've had. Be sure to visit the blog. We'll have a write-up on this and each other drink. Most weeks, the day after the episode goes up on YouTube, we'll have another blog entry for IBA in real life, where we look at how we get the drink at a local Seattle cocktail bar, if they make it often, have variants, etc. Not sure if we'll do that or not yet this week, but either check back on the blog the day after this posts, or follow on Twitter at shaking_sipping. We'll have updates there whenever we post such a thing. That's all we've got for you this week, but we'll be back next week with the next drink from the IBA's list. Until then, happy sipping. Cheers.